7 habits that make you weak. Eliminate them from your life immediately. Do you consider yourself to have a strong emotional foundation? Emotional resilience refers to a person's ability to overcome hardship and keep a healthy relationship with their feelings, both of which are vital components of emotional strength. On the other hand, emotional weakness is the inability to manage one's sentiments or to communicate those feelings in a way that is constructive, well-balanced, and healthy for oneself or others. It has the potential to affect a lot of different aspects of your life, such as the choices you make, the relationships you keep, and the habits you stick to. On the other hand, it is not anyone's responsibility, nor is it something that they have any reason to feel ashamed of themselves for having done. Neither of these things are true. You should instead focus on collecting the knowledge and abilities necessary to figure out how to cope with the situation so that you can figure out how to deal with it. Keeping this in mind, the following paragraphs will discuss 7 habits that might cause a person to become emotionally fragile. Number 7. Lacking or having little faith in one's abilities. What do you regard to be one of the most significant flaws in your character? How many times have you tried that hobby before finally giving up on it since you concluded that you are not very good at it? What you might not realize is that just because you got off to a poor start in a specific effort does not necessarily mean that you do not possess the necessary gifts or talents for that particular endeavor. If you give credibility to the very first notion that occurs to you, you will almost surely limit yourself and bring yourself down. In the study of psychology, this theory is described as a self-fulfilling prophecy. To put it another way, if you have a strong opinion that something exists, you will unconsciously act in a way that confirms that idea. This is known as the confirmation bias. It is far more probable that you will perform poorly on a math test, for example, if you go into it with the mindset that you are going to fail it. This is because you do not have confidence in your abilities. If you don't have faith in yourself and the things you can accomplish, you're going to have a fragile emotional state, and as a result, your performance will suffer. Number 6. Failing to care for oneself in an appropriate manner. Do you find it tough to stop what you're doing and take breaks when they're necessary? It may appear counterintuitive, but in our culture that places a strong emphasis on work, it can be more difficult to take time off than it is to continue pushing oneself to the exact limit of their capabilities. People who have difficulty are emotionally inclined to base their sense of self-worth on other variables, such as their achievements, status, or income, rather than on who they are as individuals. This is because these people struggle to accept themselves for who they are. In the end, it doesn't matter how often we hear the slogan "Love yourself," putting it into reality is still an extraordinarily difficult undertaking. This is true regardless of how often we hear the slogan. This can lead to several problems, some of which include a failure to engage in self-care practices, a failure to prioritize one's physical health, and burnout. It's conceivable that you're not aware of this, but taking some time off can help you become more resilient. In the end, your value is not dependent on the things that you can achieve, rather, it is established based on the person that you are. Number 5. Making decisions based on one's emotions rather than on one's fundamental principles and ideals. Have you ever experienced regret because you let your first response to something spiral out of control and sour the situation? If this describes you, then you have likely had the experience of letting your emotions get the better of you on more than one occasion. Someone who is emotionally weak is unable to put their feelings, their ideals, or their thinking into harmony with one another. This suggests that you tend to think with your feelings rather than with your head the majority of the time. Even if how you are feeling is supposed to be a factor in your decisions, making it the primary consideration puts you at risk of making quick, ignorant, or even extreme choices. Therefore, the next time you are obliged to make a difficult choice, make an effort to understand the emotions that you are experiencing and analyze whether or not it is lending greater weight to the rules and logic that you have established for yourself. Number 4. Deciding for yourself based on how you are experiencing the moment. Do you ever have conversations with yourself in which you say things like, "This isn't a normal feeling," or "I shouldn't feel like this since no one else does"? It could be simple to evaluate yourself based on how you are feeling, but doing so could have a lot of unintended consequences for you in the long run. It makes you more emotionally fragile and may also drive you, to protect yourself, to repress, deny, or deflect your feelings. Your emotions are one of the most essential guides in choosing what you should and shouldn't do, as well as your boundaries and the things that you find delightful. This applies to both the things that you should not do and the things that you should do. They are there to guide you, therefore you should constantly make an effort to keep in mind that all of your emotions have validity and should be provided an outlet. Since they are there to guide you, you should always make an effort to keep in mind that they have merit. Number 3. The compulsive need to find a rationalization for everything. Do you believe the adage that everything happens for a reason? Everything happens for a reason? You run the risk of being emotionally fragile if you constantly try to find a rational explanation for everything, regardless of whether or not you are successful in doing so. It's probable that if you can't accept that sometimes things happen that you can't explain or reason, you'll end up spending more time overthinking and analyzing things rather than taking action and looking for solutions to cope with the issue. This is because you won't be able to accept that sometimes things happen that you can't explain or understand. An important indicator of one's emotional fortitude is the degree to which they can accept the part that chance plays in their life and accept it positively. Number 2. An unhealthy preoccupation with overseeing and coordinating all aspects of life. Do you have a strategy for every one of the facets of your life? You have a distinct concept of the line of employment that you would like to pursue, as well as whether or not you will get married, whether or not you would like to have children, and other pertinent details. Even while making a timeline is a great way to get a general idea of what you want out of life, it is essential to keep in mind that almost nothing ever goes precisely as planned. This is something you should keep in mind even when making a timeline. If you allow yourself to get unduly devoted to a single course of action, you put yourself in danger of developing a closed mindset and missing out on a wide variety of opportunities simply because you did not look for them when you had the chance to do so. You also face the risk of being less emotionally flexible, which means that if something goes wrong, you are more likely to fall apart as a whole as opposed to adjusting to the circumstances. This is a risk that you should avoid at all costs. Last but not least, you might find that you spend more time planning than you do accomplishing something, which is somewhat related to the fact that you are required to explain everything. Having a strong emotional resilience ultimately requires admitting that you simply cannot predict everything, regardless of how uncomfortable it may sound. This is one of the most fundamental components of having strong emotional resilience. Number 1. Permitting the influence of other people to affect you. Have you ever bought something solely because you knew there would be a lot of competition for it? A crucial indicator of mental toughness is the ability to differentiate oneself from others while maintaining integrity in one's personality. On the other hand, if you let other people influence you, you run the risk of prioritizing their needs over your own and, as a result, making choices that are not in your best interest. This can happen if you allow yourself to be swayed by the opinions of others. If other people become aware of your emotional fragility, they may attempt to use it for their own gain. As a result, even though doing so may be difficult, you should attempt to bear in mind that the facet of your existence that is, in the end, most important is the desires and prerequisites that you have. Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in our comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.